In this special two-part edition of Border Sport in Focus, I'll be meeting up with 6 of the greatest ever rugby players from the 70s and 80s. Icons of the game known throughout the world, and all of them born and bred in the south of Scotland. All 6 come from different clubs in the Scottish Borders, and joining me to give an insight into the players and the clubs is Bill Johnstone, one of the greatest commentators in sport, himself a Borderer, and of course nephew of the late great Bill McLaren. Well, Bill, fair to say that the 70s and the 80s was a golden era for Borders Rugby.
It certainly was, Stuart. It was a time when the border clubs were thriving, but also there were 10 or 11 players in the Scottish national team as well. So that always had great interest down here in the Borders. And one of the players, of course, was scrum half Roy Laidlaw. The cheeriest of people. He always goes about his life nowadays with the broadest of grins on his face. But he was a very serious rugby player, and that mixture of enjoyment of the game and highly applied skills of the game got him into right to the top echelons, where he played for Scotland 47 times, and he played for the British Lions as well. So he's a lad who accomplished a tremendous amount in his time. We always thrilled here at Riverside, where we're standing now, when this fella would break from the scrum, because the searing break that Laidlaw had was one of his great characteristics. It brought him 6 of his 7 tries against Ireland. Pace round the side of the scrum. Jim Neely, the broadcaster, used to call him a right wee pest. and Laidlaw, of course, just played mayhem with the opposition cover defence. He was a great player, fine lad.
I remember playing in the B game at Lansdowne Road, and I scored a couple of tries in the top right hand corner, and then I scored 2 more in the Triple Crown game, and another one 87 or whatever it was, and I think there's a bit of the ground named after me, Laidlaw's Corner.
But I mean, we've seen a lot of scrum halves who make breaks, but you kind of made an art of it, really, didn't you?
Yeah, well, it was one of my real strong points. I had a quick takeaway, and I was able to step the bigger, heavier players, and I scored a lot of tries, for Jed and for the South, and it's a pity the South isn't still here. It was a great stepping stone for me, and most of the players came from Gala and Hoyk, and I think I played 68 times for the South, and we had some amazing fixtures, playing at New Zealand and Australia, Fiji, teams like that, as well as the 4 districts.
You have this special relationship with John Rutherford.
John and I, have always got on very well, together. John was a world-class player. I'd put myself down as an international player, but John was a world-class player, and I always think if you've got a couple of world-class players in your team, then the rest can follow on. I loved my rugby, and I also enjoyed my work, and I think, I'm sure I would have been quite happy going to play rugby every day or train for rugby every day, but I always think it was good to get back into the town community and get a bit of banter with the locals, and they would put you right if you hadn't played very well in the previous Saturday. It's been an amazing rugby career, and winning the Grand Slam, and just what an achievement it was. I always remember my granny was a great rugby person, and she saw the 1925 rugby Grand Slam at Murrayfield when they opened the stadium. She was there live. She was there in the 84 Grand Slam, and she didn't make it to Murrayfield for the 91, but she stayed at home and watched it on telly, and she loved rugby.
Fantastic. What a tremendous thing. She saw all 3 Grand Slams.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if there were anybody else that done that.
Well, it's going to be a real joy to go round the grounds, to 6 of the best grounds in the Borders with you today. So we're looking forward to that. We're starting here at Riverside Park. Tell us about your own memories of this ground.
Oh, I've so many. So many, because I played here, and as a school teacher at the local grammar school here, I had so many school teams playing on this field. Riverside has seen some great things here, not just in the 15s, 7-a-sides as well, where the local team has done well. And other visiting teams as well have provided great rugby for the crowd who sit up there. Can I just turn round and point up to the back? That bit of ground up at the top end is known locally as the Cop. And of course the crowd up there give the referees pelters if the referee's decision doesn't go according to the crowds. So now and then you get some very good banter between the officials and the crowds, and that sort of thing, gives good memories of Jed Forest as a rugby club, and also the part that the game plays here in the fabric of the town. This club is hugely important to Jedburgh as a social centre, as a centre where young people can get together and burn off any hot energy and nonsense in their systems and turn it towards a laws framework, the game of rugby union, and just enjoy the thrill and the contact and the camaraderie.
Here we are at Mansfield Park, and your memories go way, way back.
They do indeed, because the first rugby match I ever saw was sitting in what used to be the old wooden stand just behind us. And it was sitting with my grandfather, Bill McLaren, watching his son, my uncle, Bill McLaren, playing for Hawick. And I've got a vivid memory of being pointed. He was being pointed at by my grandfather, who always sat in the stand and was a chain smoker. So we saw everything through a cloud of smoke. But there was Bill jumping around in the line-out and so on and having a grand time. That's my first ever memory of a Hawick match here. But as a schoolboy and as a youngster, I used to stand just across on the far side on what we called the working man's stand, the terraces. And we would watch the Hawick teams over the years come out and put the opposition to the sword, we hoped. And very often, of course, they did. And we saw the great Hawick players, Hugh MacLeod, Robin Charters, fellas like that, Norman Sudden, guys who went on to play loads and loads of times for Scotland. And of course, the one and only Jim Renwick. As a laddie, I always loved watching Hawick play, and if somebody was off injured, you were disappointed. But later on, when Renwick was missing from the lineup for an injury, it was huge disappointment, because he always brought something to the game which nobody else could bring. He had flaring acceleration, he had a flickering sidestep, he had an eye for a gap. He played alongside Alistair Cranston, of course, a lot of times, whereas Cranston was the bludgeon, Renwick was the rapier. And it was just a great contrast, and they were so effective for Hawick. And Jim Renwick had a great career in rugby, Hawick in the south and then Scotland and the Lions, and brought great credit to his club here.
When you look at the highlights, for me it was the whole thing, the whole sort of picture of rugby coming in from the PSA to the Harlequins, to Hawick, to the South, Scotland, going through to maybe the Lions tours. But I think when you look back, what you enjoyed the most was playing for your club. I think every week, your bread and butter stuff, that was the good fun. And the tours and the icing and the cake and the things you remember about playing for Scotland, running down at Murrayfield, these stay in your memory as well. But unfortunately, they're all just memories now, but good memories. And Jimmy Chalmers used to say memories are better than dreams, and I think he's right.
Of course, a few regrets in there, no doubt, as well, because you more or less retired from international rugby just before the Grand Slam season.
Well, maybe there was a message there. I played. I had about 10 seasons for Scotland, and in the year I got injured. I got injured at Langham in the last game of the season, and I've been injured a few times at Langham, to be honest, because they're not the most easy team to play against, however. And I missed the whole of that season with a knee injury, and to be fair, the boy that came in, Ewan Kennedy came in, and he's a good boy, Ewan. I had no axe to grind. That's just the way it goes in rugby and life. You just take what's in front of you.
52 caps, so, which of course was a record then. I think it was Andy Irvin's record you beat?
I won more than Andy. I always said I was just one better than Andy, but no, I got that in Romania. I came back and they toured Romania, and I played in Romania which was my last game really. Sean McGuckey got his first cap a Hawick boy, and I got my last cap. Well, they both got the last caps that day because he never got in again.
And Romania, an interesting place to end your career.
It's not my favourite bit to tour. I think the Ceausescu's were still in power then, and there wasn't a lot to do, there wasn't a lot to spend your money on. I remember coming back through customs, and there wasn't much in the shops, and I had a few, I can't remember what the currency was it lei or something like that, and I had a few thousand lei and nothing to spend it on, so I ended up bringing a guitar and 2 cuckoo clocks back because there was nothing else to bring back.
Do you play guitar?
No, I tried. I once bought a guitar and I've tried to learn it. It's under the bed now.
Same one?
Aye, same one, and I sometimes sit away and try and play it, but I think I need to learn to tune it first. You remember every game again, whether it was your first game especially, whether it was for the PSA, the Quins or Hawick, in Scotland special I suppose, but I remember the build-up. It was pretty clear we were playing France and how we were going to play. Peter Brown was the captain and Bill Dickinson, well, I think it was a coach then, it was the advisor to the captain, and we did prepare pretty good. We looked at videos of France, we knew what to expect, and the Murrayfield factor was always good in the 70s. We always got great crowds, and running down the tunnel, it's pretty special in your first cap, and you remember that, and I think that's what drives you back to keep wanting to get that feeling. It must be great for these professionals to get that all the time now. It makes you want to play, it makes you want to get the ball in your hands and play, really, aye. It's great. Our generation of players tended to stay at their clubs because money wasn't the cause, and it was playing rugby for enjoyment, playing for your town. And if you look at people like Rudd and Roy, we stayed at Jed and Selkirk, I mean, nowadays that probably wouldn't be possible, they would have to move on. But in these days you could stay at your club and you could meet for the South and you could play for the South, and it's a good question. Would it be better if all these players got together and played every week? Would they get better? Or is it better if they only play now and again and come back to their clubs and lift the rest up? So it's a good question. Who knows? Who knows what the answer is? But I think the South was fantastic in our day. It gave you something to go for, to play for them. Playing for Hawick was probably gave you a better chance of getting at the South team, to be honest, because Hawick were pretty strong in the 70s, and quite often the South team was made up with a lot of Hawick players, but it still left room for exceptional players like Peter Dodge, John Jeffrey, Rudd, Roy, all these boys that came in, and it was good for them to come in and play at the next level up as well. Hawick Gala games were fantastic to play in. As much as 7,000-8,000 people. I remember the playoff when we finished level at Melrose. There was about 12 to 15,000 people watching a club game, and just great times. It's sad to think that we'll never get back like that, and we'll have to move to other clubs. But people didn't move in our day because their cause wasn't the money. Their cause was to get as far as they can, but they were able to do that through the system. The system doesn't allow that now, so you have to move with the times, I suppose.
But although you cut short your own career through injury, as I say, after the Romania game, as far as the international is concerned, you did actually come back to play for Hawick Harlequins, and you were playing till you were in your 40s.
Well, that's right. The thing that I missed was the game, and whether I'd made the big time in rugby or no, I think I would have still played rugby for the Quins up the park every week. Whether there been people watching or no, I just liked the game. I liked getting your kit on a Saturday and getting out and pitting your wits or your effort against another team, and afterwards having a few beers in the bar. And I finished when I was about 34 for Hawick, but I went on to play for the Quins till I was 40. And maybe I went on too long because I've got the aches and pains now that maybe I shouldn't have. But I just enjoyed the game. I enjoyed just walking at a rugby club and getting the feeling and having a few pints in the crack. And it was part of the game. It was part of the game of rugby. But I think maybe that's missing a little bit out of the game. And whether it ever comes back or no, then we'll just have to wait and see.
Now, the other thing about the British Lions is very, very recently they decided it would be a good idea to award caps to all the Lions players. That, of course, includes yourself, and that must have been a proud moment.
It came through the door, a box, and I wondered what it was, and opened it, and on the top was a picture of the Lions, and it was a bit awkward getting at the box, and underneath was a red cap, and it's pretty nice, aye. All the kids had it on, they were wanting their photo taken, right, and all the kids are wanting it left of them, I think, so it's pretty nice, aye. Number 558, I think I am, so I'll remember that because I'm 5'8", so that's easy enough to remember. But aye, but I always thought when you got the blazer, then that was the sort of cap, but now they're giving out caps, so aye, it's nice to have that, aye. Aye, it was good. I went on with another Hoyk boy, Alan Tomes, was on the tour as well, and that was unusual for two club boys to be on the same tour, but we really enjoyed it, and although we trained hard every morning, and Al myself didn't miss a session. We said before we went that we wanted to do it right, so we never missed a session, and but in afternoons, if we were wanting people to go and open a shop or see people or visit a school or something, we would quite often put our hands up and go and saw the people and got out in South Africa. So we weren't going to sit back and brood, we were going to go out and enjoy it as well. And we did that, and we had a good time, aye.
This was Uncle Bill's club, wasn't it? Bill McLaren, Hoyk, the two went together.
I wish I had a Hoyk ball to offer you, Stuart, just in memory of Bill. He was Hoyk through and through, and he played his games here, of course, for Hoyk Rugby Club, and did commentaries here, radio over there in the stand, and television across in the terraces yonder over many, many years. And his legacy for Hoyk Rugby is enormous, just enormous, in terms of the love that he brought to the game, which he spread to people throughout Scotland, the UK, the world. But he was just a legend. If ever anybody deserved the term legend, it's W.P. McLaren.
Well, Bill, we've moved up the A7. We're now at Philiphaugh, the home of Selkirk Rugby Club.
And what a club it is as well. What a tradition and what a great history Selkirk Rugby Club has. Inside the club rooms here, you know, there'll be the picture gallery with all the old caps there. From away back in the mists of time through more modern times, John Rutherford, Gordon Hunter and so on, right up to the modern days with Alex Dunbar and Lee Jones. So Selkirk has made huge contributions towards Scottish rugby as well. And they've had some great teams, some wonderful teams. I've seen some smashing games here at Philiphaugh. Rutherford himself, John Rutherford, is the iconic figure in Selkirk rugby history. He was a glider, going through doors where none existed, going through gaps where none existed. And interestingly enough, in his rugby career, he dropped 12 goals for Scotland, which is an amazing tally for an international rugby. So kicking and running and passing, great skills for J.Y. Rutherford. And he was a great servant to Scottish rugby as well as Selkirk rugby.
If you were to interview my wife, she would probably tell you that I was married more at the club than her. But I step back a lot now, but for a while there, you know, I was spending quite a lot of time down there. But no, I started as a ball boy, and then I played up the schools, youth club, then came up through the club. But during that time, I've seen so many changes. You know, Stuart, there was 5 teams at Selkirk when I first played. Now the club have invested so well. It's facilities for the players are really second to none.
Your debut against Wales, and Paul Ringer, of course, came up from Wales. You thought he was going to give you some good tidings.
I did, the first minute of the game, and he came over to tell me that quite nicely he was going to break my legs. But, you know, it was great after the game. He was a good bloke. And, you know, that was just the game in these days. There was a lot of intimidation. He wasn't the only one. And, of course, with Scottish players at it as well. And we had a great night.
Well, let's turn to your career, 42 caps for Scotland, many, many highlights. What would you say would be your biggest highlight?
The 84 Grand Slam was huge. We played a fantastic game down in Wales and we beat them 5-1. And afterwards, they used to have these fantastic banquets, brilliant dinners. And the captain of that Welsh team was Gareth Davis. And as a tribute to the Scottish team, in his speech, he got all the Welsh team to stand up and sing Flower of Scotland.
Brilliant, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't imagine that happening today, but... And the other game I was going to mention was the 86 game against England, when we beat them 33-6, and that was the game where they picked 5 number 8s. And England, as usual, were huge. And we played on a beautiful day. It was perfect for running rugby, and we played some great stuff. And I'm not sure if that still isn't the biggest score against England. So the Grand Slam, but there was games in between that were really special.
And of course, representing the British Lions, British and Irish Lions. And of course, you know, it was fantastic to see that every person who had played for the British Lions or British and Irish Lions received the cap, long overdue. That's something that's going to be proudly hanging on your wall.
Yes, I didn't know anything about it. So when it arrived, do you know, I thought it was something my wife Alison had ordered, but I saw it was addressed to me, and it's a beautiful piece of work. It really was, and it was very humbling. And the Lions, the Scottish Lions players that I've spoken to since, all feel the same way. And you're absolutely right, Stuart. I mean, I don't know why Lions players didn't get caps all these years ago.
Next time, in the second part of this special programme, we visit Gala, Kelso and Melrose and speak with another 3 rugby greats born in the Borders: Peter Dodds, John Jeffrey and Jim Telfer.